I never thought a simple Tuesday could feel like a turning point. The first time I saw her, she was standing in the soft light that spilled through the cafe window, a cup of coffee in one hand, a book in the other. Mid-40s, but something about her made her glow like she was in her 20s, not because she tried to look young, but because she carried herself with a confidence and ease I couldn't stop staring at. Her hair, streaked with silver, framed a face that had lived, laughed, and loved, and still, somehow, kept secrets in the corners of her eyes. I, on the other hand, was 23, fumbling with my own cup of coffee, feeling like a boy in a room that seemed far too grown up. But the moment our eyes met, I felt a jolt, a kind of recognition I couldn't explain. Her gaze lingered, not predatory, not rehearsed, but curious, teasing, like she was measuring me and finding something worth noticing. She smiled then, almost imperceptibly, and I swear it twisted my stomach in the best and worst ways. I wanted to tell her how beautiful she looked in that quiet, unassuming way that made the world slow down, but I didn't. Instead, I let my voice tremble when I said, "Mind if I sit here?" She didn't answer immediately. She just tilted her head, studying me like a puzzle she wasn't in a rush to solve. Then, finally, she said, "Sure," and moved her bag just enough to make room. The warmth of her nearness made the air feel heavier, every heartbeat echoing. I caught the faint scent of her perfume, something like vanilla and late summer rain, and it stayed with me long after she spoke. We didn't talk much at first. She sipped her coffee slowly, eyes flicking occasionally to my notebook, where I had been sketching doodles I didn't even notice. I caught myself stealing glances at her, noticing the curve of her smile, the way her fingers danced over the edge of the cup. She laughed once, quietly, at something I muttered under my breath, and I felt exposed in a way I hadn't with anyone before. I wanted to ask everything and nothing all at once. I wanted to know her favorite color, her regrets, the stories her laugh hid. But I didn't. Instead, we sat in that quiet cafe, a fragile bubble around us, neither of us breaking it, not yet. And in that space, there was tension. Not the loud kind you see in movies, but the kind that hums quietly beneath your skin, in the small, unintentional touches, the brushing of knees under the table, the shared silence that felt like confession. When she finally spoke, it was about something mundane, a book she had finished, a movie she loved, but the way she said it, softly, with her eyes flicking up to mine now and then, made my chest tighten. Every word was a thread, pulling me closer to her, and I knew, somewhere deep inside, that I was walking toward a fire I might not be ready to survive. I wanted to stay there forever, suspended between courage and fear, until the sound of a doorbell cracked the spell. Her head snapped up first, eyes wide, lips parting in a silent question. I followed her gaze, my stomach sinking. Who would be here? What did it mean? I didn't know yet that the answer would change everything, my carefully contained heart, her guarded smile, and the invisible line between us. And as she stood, just for a moment, a shadow crossing her expression, I realized I wasn't leaving her side, not ever. Couldn't stop thinking about her after that cafe, even as I walked home with the winter wind nipping at my ears. Something about her presence lingered, like the faint echo of a melody you can't name. I knew I shouldn't feel this way. I was 23, she was older. Experienced. A woman who had lived through heartbreaks I couldn't even imagine. And yet, every memory of that quiet moment, the tilt of her head, the way her laugh softened the edges of the room, pulled me in. She had told me, almost in passing, that she had been divorced for nearly 5 years. A long marriage that ended quietly, without fanfare, leaving her with a few bruised memories and a small apartment filled with books, photographs, and the faint scent of lavender. I imagined the loneliness she carried like an old coat she never quite took off. And I wondered if, beneath the confident smile, there were nights she felt invisible, craving someone to see her, not the surface, not the story everyone expected, but her real self. Me. I had my own scars. Not physical, not dramatic, but the kind that gnawed quietly, a first love who left without explanation, friends who grew distant, a family that said don't worry when everything inside me did. I wasn't supposed to fall for her. I knew that. She was too vibrant, too certain, too untouchable. And yet, here I was, replaying her voice in my head, tracing the line of her jaw in my imagination, feeling my chest tighten with every memory. There was something intoxicating about the risk, too. About knowing that what I wanted most, her attention, her warmth, her smile, was complicated. That this attraction could be frowned upon, whispered about, or even dangerous. She carried the kind of allure that wasn't just beauty, it was maturity, depth, and a hint of mischief that made me feel like I was teetering on the edge of something I might never understand. I found myself at her door one evening, under the pretense of returning a book I had borrowed. She opened it, wearing a cardigan that fell just right over her shoulders, hair slightly mussed from the day. The air between us was thick, heavier than the silence of any cafe, and I felt my pulse in my throat. She didn't say anything at first. She just watched me, like she was deciding whether to let me step closer, or push me away. And then, it happened. My hand brushed against hers as I handed her the book. Just a brush, fleeting, almost accidental. But the warmth, the small shock of contact, made us both pause. She didn't pull away, and neither did I. For a moment, we simply stood there, staring at each other in that tiny hallway, words useless, breaths too loud. A shared memory of her laugh from that afternoon filled the quiet, and I felt a strange, tender connection that wasn't meant to exist yet somehow did. I wanted to ask her something, anything, but my voice faltered. And in that silence, the tension spoke louder than any words could. It was electric. And dangerous. The first time I thought we were going too far, it was almost accidental. We had stayed late at the cafe, talking about nothing and everything, her stories about places she'd traveled alone, my awkward attempts at humor, the quiet hum of the evening around us. Outside, the city lights blurred through the windows. Inside, it felt like we were the only two people in existence. I laughed at something she said and leaned forward just a little too much. She leaned in at the same time. Our eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world shrank. I could feel her breath, soft, close, and I thought to God, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the line we shouldn't cross. But then her phone buzzed on the table, breaking the spell. She glanced at the screen, frowned, and muttered something about an old friend checking in. She smiled at the message, but the magic had cracked. My pulse was still racing, but the moment passed. That night, on my way home, I couldn't stop replaying it. My hands itched, my chest felt tight. Why did it feel like we were constantly balancing on the edge of something dangerous? I knew it wasn't just the age difference. It was the everything else. Her history. My inexperience. The unspoken rules we were already bending just by being near each other. Then came the roommate. I hadn't expected him back so early, but there he was, barreling into the apartment like he owned the place. He noticed something off immediately, my flushed face, the way I kept glancing at my phone. He asked, and I stammered, gave a vague answer. I didn't lie, exactly, but I left out the part that mattered most, that I had spent hours with her, that I was thinking about her non-stop, that every word she said made my stomach twist. She texted me later that night. Just a short message, "Did you get home okay?" I stared at it for minutes before typing back something equally safe, something casual. But I felt guilty for even thinking about texting her. It was wrong, wasn't it? And yet, I wanted to hear from her. More than I'd wanted anyone in a long time. The next afternoon, we met again, this time at a park. Autumn leaves crunched under our feet. She joked about how she felt old, walking among college kids, and I smiled, trying to hide the way my heart leapt at even her casual touches. We talked, walked, and somehow ended up on a bench beneath an amber tree. I reached for the scarf she had dropped earlier. Our fingers touched, lightly, deliberately. I didn't know, but it sent a shiver up my spine. She didn't pull away, and I didn't either. We sat there, frozen, breathing together, the world narrowing to the space between us. And then she laughed softly, almost nervously, and the spell broke again. She shifted slightly, and I realized she might be just as scared as I was. Scared of how far this could go, scared of what it meant, scared of the lines we were already crossing. We didn't kiss. Not yet. But the tension hung between us like a storm about to break. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew, the closer we got, the harder it would be to step back. Shouldn't have gone to her apartment that night. I knew it. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me, she's older, complicated, her life is hers to live, not mine to complicate, but I went anyway. The door opened before I could knock, and there she was. Hair loose around her shoulders, a soft sweater draping her curves, and that look in her eyes, the one that made me feel like I was both seen and exposed at the same time. I wanted to run my hands through her hair, press my forehead to hers, tell her everything I felt, but I froze. She smiled, but it was a little sad, a little strained. "You came," she said, almost as if surprised. I wanted to," I admitted, words weaker than I hoped. We moved to the couch, sitting just a little too close. I could feel the heat radiating off her, the scent of her lingering from the day. Every instinct in me screamed to reach out, to close the distance, but something held me back. Fear? Respect? Or the knowledge that I'd cross a line I couldn't uncross? Then it happened. Her phone buzzed again, and this time, she froze. A message from someone I didn't know, but the tension that flickered across her face told me everything. I wasn't supposed to feel this way, but jealousy clenched my chest. Her thumb hovered over the screen, and I realized that in that small, frozen moment, I wanted to grab the phone, throw it aside, and demand that nothing else mattered but us. But I didn't. I watched her. She laughed softly at the message, but it was hollow, almost guilty. And I hated the way it made me feel, so small, so unworthy, so desperate. My hands curled into fists at my sides. I had never been like this. Never wanted someone so completely, yet felt so powerless to claim them. She turned toward me suddenly, her expression shifting, vulnerability mixing with mischief. "Why do you look like that?" she asked, voice light, but with an edge I couldn't ignore. "Like what?" I asked, though I knew exactly. "Like you're about to confess something dangerous." And I wanted to. God, I wanted to. I wanted to tell her everything, how every thought of her made my heart race, how her laugh had haunted me for weeks, how just being near her was the only thing that made sense in a world that often didn't. But before I could speak, she reached out. Her hand brushed mine, and I felt it, electric, undeniable. My chest tightened, my head spun, and every warning I'd clung to dissolved. I leaned in, slowly, tentatively. And then she paused. Eyes searching mine, almost pleading, almost daring. A sudden knock on the door froze us both. My heart dropped. We turned toward it, breath caught, the space between us charged with everything unsaid. Someone was there. And in that instant, the delicate line we'd been tiptoeing on seemed ready to shatter. The knock wasn't accidental. I knew that the moment we heard it. Her hand froze on mine, and for a second, the room felt impossibly small. Whoever it was, her ex, a neighbor, someone I didn't want in our space, was about to step into the delicate tension we'd been holding. My pulse raced. She let out a soft sigh and stood, smoothing her sweater over her hips. "It's probably just a delivery," she said, though the quiver in her voice betrayed her. I nodded, but the unease didn't leave me. Something about the way she moved, hesitant, careful, made my stomach twist. And then it happened. The door swung open. It wasn't a delivery. It was him. Her ex, standing there with an unreadable expression. And for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Not for herself, but for me, I realized too late. I stepped back instinctively. She tensed beside me, but I couldn't look away. He had seen something. Something between us. "Hey," he said, casual but sharp. I didn't expect company. Her laugh came out nervous, strained. "Oh. I was just," but I caught it, a flicker in her eyes. She had lied. Not about me, not exactly, but she hadn't been fully honest. There was history here, old complications, and I was suddenly on the outside of a story I didn't understand. My chest tightened. I wanted to step forward, demand clarity, tell him nothing mattered except what we felt. But something stopped me. The fear in her gaze, the way her fingers pressed briefly against mine, hesitant, almost guilty, made me question everything. He smiled then, that knowing, dangerous smile. "I see you've met someone new," he said, voice low, and the tension between them was palpable. Her eyes widened. She opened her mouth, closed it. I could feel the pull in the room, the weight of unsaid words, past decisions, unhealed wounds. My hand found hers again, squeezing lightly, and I realized I wasn't going to let go. "Not exactly," she said finally, voice trembling, but firm. Her honesty was small, careful, but it was there. And then he left, just as suddenly as he came, leaving a lingering sense of unease, a sharp sting of vulnerability. I turned to her, heart still racing, and saw tears in her eyes. I hadn't expected that. She looked at me, not with accusation, not with shame, but with something raw, unfiltered. A plea for understanding. I didn't mean for you to find out like this," she whispered. I swallowed, unsure of what to feel. Anger? Betrayal? Desire? The mix of it all was dizzying. And yet, I still wanted her. Still wanted this. I reached out again, brushing a stray hair from her face, and for the first time, she didn't flinch. Her hand lingered in mine. The air between us was heavier, thicker, and I realized one thing: we were past the point of pretending nothing was happening. Something had shifted. Something had changed. And in that fragile, quiet moment, I knew that nothing would ever be simple again, could feel her heartbeat before she even spoke. We were in her apartment again, the night pressed close, the city lights throwing gold stripes across the walls. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped, and I stood a step away, too nervous to move closer but unable to step back. "I can't," she started, voice trembling, then stopped. Her eyes met mine, wide and unflinching. "I've been afraid." I swallowed, trying to steady the jumble of emotions inside me: desire, fear, guilt, hope. "Of me?" I asked, voice barely more than a whisper. She shook her head. "No, of what this is. Of what it could mean. Of losing myself, or you, before it even starts." I wanted to tell her everything. About the way I'd thought of her every day since that first coffee. About the ache in my chest when she laughed, and the hollow space I felt when she was gone. About how none of it made sense, except that it felt like the only truth I'd ever known. "I don't care," I said finally, stepping closer. My hand hovered just above hers, hesitating, because I knew that every second counted, that the wrong move could shatter what fragile trust we had. "I don't care about the past. I don't care about the rules. I want you." Her breath hitched. She leaned back slightly, then forward again, as if trying to measure the risk. Her fingers trembled, brushing against mine. A small spark, electric and undeniable. I could feel her pulse, could hear the silence she had been holding like a secret weapon. I'm scared, she admitted finally. Scared that I'll ruin everything, scared that I've waited too long to feel this again. I dropped to one knee in front of her, a ridiculous, desperate gesture that somehow felt right. Then let's stop waiting, I whispered. Let's stop pretending we can control it. I'll take the risk if you will. Her lips parted slightly. I thought, no, I knew that this was the moment. The line we had danced around for weeks, months, was right there. And yet, she hesitated. Not out of doubt, but out of caution, love, fear. All at once. Then she leaned in, just enough that our breaths mingled, and I felt her warmth like fire. Our hands entwined finally, like we were correcting weeks of hesitation in a single heartbeat. The city hummed outside, irrelevant, distant. Nothing mattered but the space between us, the quiet acknowledgement that this was messy, terrifying, real. That we were letting ourselves be seen, fully, without armor. And then, just as our lips were about to meet, she froze again. Not pulling away, not rejecting, just this paused. Her eyes searched mine, full of questions, promises, and fears I didn't yet understand. I held her face gently, my thumb brushing her cheek. Whatever happens, I murmured, we'll figure it out. Together. Her lips curved in the faintest smile, a mixture of relief and longing. The moment stretched, fragile, infinite, a line between surrender and restraint. And then the screen on her phone lit up, an incoming call from a number I didn't recognize. I swallowed. The moment was still ours, but the world had returned, the phone call waited. We didn't answer it. Somehow, it didn't matter anymore. We sat together on the couch, her head resting lightly against my shoulder, the city lights washing the room in soft gold. I could feel the slow, steady rhythm of her heartbeat, and I realized I'd never wanted to memorize something more. She whispered my name, tentative, vulnerable, and I pressed my lips to the top of her head. It was the first real touch that wasn't hesitant, the first time we didn't stop ourselves. Weeks of tension, stolen glances, and almost moments condensed into that single, quiet acknowledgement, we were here. We were together. I was so scared, she admitted, voice muffled against my shirt. That this, us, would be impossible. That I'd ruin it before it even started. You didn't, I said softly. You didn't ruin anything. We took our time. And maybe that's why it feels like it does, like it's real, like it's ours. Her fingers traced the line of my jaw, careful, deliberate, as if confirming that I was real too. I wasn't sure you'd wait, she said, and I felt the weight of every word she hadn't said, every fear she'd carried alone. I would have waited forever, I told her. Because it's you. Only ever you. We laughed softly, the sound mingling with the hum of the city outside. It wasn't perfect, and we weren't perfect, but the honesty in that moment felt like something fragile and precious, worth holding on to no matter what. Later, we walked through the quiet streets hand in hand, the world around us blurred by the glow of streetlights. There were still questions, still complications, exes, judgments, the whispers of what we had risked, but they felt smaller now. Insignificant compared to the feeling of being seen, understood, and chosen. She looked up at me, eyes shimmering. Do you think we could really make this work? I smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. I don't know, I admitted. But I do know I want to try. With you. She squeezed my hand, a mix of relief and determination in her gesture. Me too. And just like that, the tension that had haunted us for months, the fear, the almost kisses, the uncertainty, finally eased. We weren't rushing. We weren't pretending. We were here, present, holding something fragile and beautiful between us. As we paused on a quiet corner, her face turned to mine, I realized that love wasn't about perfect timing or easy decisions. It was about showing up, daring to feel, and choosing each other again and again, even when the world told you not to. We didn't need to answer the phone, didn't need anyone else's approval. For the first time, it felt like everything else could wait. And as we walked back toward the apartment, shoulders brushing, hands entwined, I asked myself, could this be the beginning of something real? Could we defy the odds and make it last? The truth was, I didn't need to know yet. Because right now, we had each other, and that was enough.